that vaccine is dangerous. I'm Asher Lawson.
I'm Nyazjha Wilmer.
And I'm Micky Chenevert.
So the COVID-19 vaccines are unsafe because the drug companies created them quickly, and that may cause more unknown medical problems in the future. This is a myth surrounding the COVID-19 vaccine that me and my partners are working to dispel and remedy within this presentation. So why does this myth exist? So there is a history of medical violence in the United States over time against different communities. One of these cases is the Tuskegee experiment that was seen in Alabama, where African American males were put into this study, this experiment, where they were given syphilis and not treated adequately, even after the experiment ended in the 1970s. There's still effects being seen today through these communities that were in this experiment. And then also the ignoring and disregarding of certain groups when they do come forward with concerns. Two of the most popular groups that this occurs to are women, and specifically women of color. If women or women of color go into an emergency room and present with what they believe is a heart attack, if they think they are having a heart attack and they say that to a doctor, sometimes that doctor may disregard that and push it aside and say, oh no, you're just overreacting. Like, this is not classic textbook heart attack symptoms. And then later, this same woman will have either more health problems or sometimes even die of a heart attack because they were not treated properly. And so within these two different things, the medical violence and then also disregarding groups with concerns, it creates a stigma or a belief that medicine is always going to be violent or volatile against you, and therefore you should be hesitant when it comes to trusting it. And that is a perfectly valid belief, and it needs to be talked about more in order to look forward in the future and create a better environment for people where they feel safe receiving medicine and help from the government. So to resolve this myth, we would like to look at the fact that the COVID-19 vaccines were able to be made so quickly because of the past vaccine research into different diseases. And they also had experience with previous coronaviruses, where they were working to develop vaccines for the SARS and MERS diseases. So past vaccine research into other diseases, that kind of clues into HIV. HIV does not have a vaccine currently, but they have been working to make one. And therefore, they used a lot of that research to develop the COVID-19 vaccine. So there was also people willing to participate in human trials. For the first time in history almost, there was a large scale of human trials. And because people were willing to step forward and act as a kind of control group sometimes, in a sense, if that makes sense, they were able to produce them quicker. Well, not produce them, but they were able to get them approved quicker and to see the symptoms and effects that the vaccines had on actual people, instead of just guessing about, hey, this might do this, or this might affect this person this way. And there's still some questions about that with the COVID-19 vaccine, but that's normal. And then also the FDA fast-tracked the vaccines through the review lines. But that does not mean that they weren't reviewed properly. It just means that they were put ahead of schedule compared to the years that it takes certain vaccines to get developed. We have a picture of Dolly Parton receiving her vaccine. It was the Moderna vaccine, which she helped fund. And Dolly being publicly vaccinated and having a video of her being vaccinated online helped dispel some of the rumors that the vaccine was unsafe, because Dolly Parton is held as this public figure who is trustworthy. And the fact that the vaccine was good enough for Dolly, some people would say, if it's good enough for Dolly, then it's good enough for me, and I trust it.
So now we're going to discuss the parallels of the smallpox vaccine in Japan to the COVID vaccine. So first off, what is smallpox? Smallpox is a contagious and deadly disease that has existed for thousands of years. It spreads through direct contact from person to person and through other means. The symptoms appear 10 to 14 days after you're infected, and pock marks start to appear all over the body. They rupture and scar, and the lesions on the face can result in blindness. This disease can kill people, but most people do survive, but life is scarred for the rest of their life. Slide.
This book is The Vaccinators by Nyazjha, and it focuses on smallpox vaccination efforts in Japan. And it kind of dissuades the historical notion that most scholars make that Japan was super willing to accept the vaccine. And while that is true for a lot of the common people, medical doctors in Japan weren't as open to the vaccine. Slide. So right before the vaccine was made available in Japan, there was an edict from the Tokugawa shogunate saying that Western medicine can only be used in cases of surgery. This edict was eventually removed in 1858 because the vaccine proved to be quite effective, but it was up until that point technically illegal for vaccination. Within Japan at this time, there's two schools of thought. There's the Ranpo doctors who are trained in Western medicine. They're the people who brought the vaccine to Japan, and the fact that it was Japanese people bringing a vaccine to other Japanese, it helped to boost confidence in the vaccine. Whereas with the Kanpo, they are trained in classical Chinese medicine, and they are the group of doctors who are favored by the shogunate. Slide.
So this is a picture of vaccination tools that were used in the 19th century. This is a picture of vaccination tools in the Meiji period and in the 19th century. And this is just a set of tools that was used in Japan for vaccination at the time.
So the government did not publicly support vaccination efforts, but this was likely to ensure the government didn't face any public backlash if the vaccines failed. So no efforts were made to stop vaccination efforts, but the vaccines managed to take off because variolation was never truly accepted as a method of prevention, as the risk was seen as too great. Slide. The Kanpo doctors did not immediately accept the vaccine due to it being foreign, and that their own beliefs that smallpox was created by poison in the body and that needed to be expunged. So one doctor said that parents who vaccinate their children were unwittingly creating a risk of more serious problems that could arise later in life. One doctor even tried making his own vaccine by inoculating cows with smallpox. Slide.
So this is a piece of art created during this period in which Japan was receiving vaccines. And it's called Tamatoto Banishes the Smallpox Demon from the Island of Oshima. And Tamatoto is an important figure to the Japanese. He was seen as like a warrior, a protector. And so you can really see that here as he's throwing the smallpox demon into the water, basically banishing smallpox from Japan forever. And you could say that Tamatoto here represents the vaccine, and the vaccine is now protecting all of Japan. Slide.
So here is the parallel differences between the smallpox vaccine in Japan and the COVID-19 vaccine. In Japan, the opponents of the vaccines were mostly medical professionals, and the cultural beliefs such as Japanese purity made these vaccines less attractive, as doctors felt it would disrupt the purity of their patients. The denial of the vaccine would be what could be effective, denial that cowpox was related to smallpox, and that there was no medical precedent for the first vaccine.
Whereas with the COVID-19 vaccine, the opponents of the vaccine were primarily the general public, and their belief that the speed in which vaccines were developed was dangerous and ineffective. And there was years of medical knowledge with the precedent of past vaccines being effective and safe, whereas with Japan, smallpox was the first vaccine.
And the similarities between these two cases, in both cases, vaccines are seen as dangerous. In both cases, there's the question of, is this going to keep me safe? Is this going to cause future medical issues? However, in both cases, the vaccine is slowly being more and more accepted. Japan, after this period, didn't really have to deal with smallpox. And in fact, they actually started creating vaccine mandates and vaccinating pretty much everyone they could. Whereas in America, as time goes on, the COVID vaccines, the more there are good representations of, oh, it's not hurting people, there's not that many side effects. Over time, it's becoming more and more accepted, and more people are choosing to get the vaccine.